6 years later when I actually quit my corporate job and stepped away and started like the real business that you invested in and I invested in, and we really started to like, let's go big with this thing. But we could have started it back then. We would be better off today if we had. But
Yeah.
I was afraid to take that step
Yeah.
because there was some safety in the job. At the time, I was probably making like 120, 130, right? In 2016, maybe a little bit more than that. But my income was growing every single year.
Yeah.
That's hard to walk away from.
It is. And 120K to you now is chump change.
Yeah.
Compared to what you're bringing in now. And even if you'd stayed and climbing the corporate ladder, it'd still be chump change compared to what you'd be making now. But you talk about that fear of stepping away from that guarantee.
Yeah.
And you and I both know people who have those golden shackles of I'm already making six figures. I've got a family. I've got a dog. I've got responsibilities. I can't leave this behind to go jump ship. But I find what you said there really interesting that, hey, back in 2016, I should have just taken the leap then.
Yeah.
What do you know now today about yourself as a business person that you didn't know back then that would have encouraged you to just take that leap?
It's easy to make the statement now, looking back on it, because I understand the determination. I understand I've now seen the evidence of like, no matter what gets thrown at us, we're going to figure it out. Right. I've got this attitude that I can figure anything out. A lot of times I don't figure it out until I'm forced to. And that's what I've seen for myself. So when I look back to 2016 and I say, man, I wish someone would have pushed me off the dock into the water because I would have figured out how to swim. I know that now based on what I've seen. It would have been scary, right? But that's part of what being pushed into the deep end does, right? The strongest are going to survive. So I know that things would have worked out, but I think it's just determination, it's grit, but it's also probably most importantly, even though I didn't know all the things that I didn't know, I look back on it now and say, I knew enough. I knew enough to get started. And that's really all that mattered. We had customers who were willing to pay us when I was doing this semi-part-time, right? They were willing to separate themselves from their dollars for the value that we were providing. That's already more than enough. How many businesses have you heard of that start where people not only put their own money into it, but take on investors and never make a dollar, right? They don't know how to get that first customer.
Yeah.
So looking at it now with what I know today, like we already had the signal that we were providing enough value to the marketplace for someone to pay us. And that's enough for you to go ahead and take that chance. Here's the other thing I'll say. The longer I waited in my career and the more that my corporate income increased, and my life comfort level increased, I realized the less likely it was that I would ever step away.
Yeah.
That I would ever start this thing. And so I felt like in 2022 at 32, 33 years old, like this is my last chance to actually get out of here before I take on that next role where the perks are just too good. The pay's just a little bit too sweet to be able to go ahead and bet on myself now. The risk reward is just not there anymore.
I mean, I know so many people, we have this conversation around them making really, really good money, and they've got this idea and this dream, and they feel stuck in their job, but like, this is all the stuff I was supposed to aspire to. Like, I'm already making the money that I ever wanted to, I can support my family. We have a good life, a decent life. We have the cars we want, the houses that we want. But they feel stuck thinking, I got to do this for 30 more years and just keep on showing up and grinding this out. Is this the existence that I was promised? And it strikes me that you got to a point where you were willing to let that go for the dream that was there. And so for all those people who are out there who are in a job that they don't really like, but that they're doing very well in and they're finding classic success, what do you say to those people about what you found when you took the leap and put life into your own hands?
Yeah. Probably the first thing is that it's less of a leap than you think. Because when I finally put things into the perspective of what's my actual worst case scenario here, right? What if this thing is a massive flop in 6 months? I know how much money I'm putting into it. Right? You were putting money into it, right? But at the end of the day, like, while I don't want you to lose your money, like, that doesn't change anything for my personal situation if this business flops, right? So when I kind of came to the realization that, okay, all right, this feels really scary to step away from my career, but I'm also in my early 30s. I'm relatively early in my career. If I'm literally thinking that I have to do this for 30 years, like, this is the existence that I've chosen, what's the difference if I take 6 months and I try this venture and maybe I burn $50 or $100,000, right? So I'm a little bit poorer and I've probably lost a little bit of my dignity, right? That I'll have to work on getting back. But that was my worst case scenario, was I in 6 months go back, crawling back to a job and say, okay, this is what I'm going to have to do. But at least if that was the story, at least I tried. At least I gave it my best. And I tried and I failed. And now I can live with my 25 or 30-year career left. And I'll put money into my 401k and my backdoor Roth IRA, and I'll save for my kids' college fund, and life will work out just fine. It's just not going to be big. It's not going to be the grandeur that I had imagined. But that was literally the worst case scenario. And I think when I finally started to realize that, it's like, what the hell? Like, let's give this thing a go.
Yeah.
And I think the funny thing that, people like you, other entrepreneurs that I know, is my mindset is so different now, where if something happened crazily in our market and our business was to fail for some reason, getting a job is the last thing that's on my mind.
Yeah.
That's not plan B, C, or D.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not ashamed to go back to work in that situation if 3 or 4 other things actually fail. But I've got ideas for days. We've done this before. We could do it again, right? Find some way to provide value to a marketplace. In this case, it was in an area of expertise for me, but find another way to provide value and go do that, right?
It's so funny how people go through these stages when they think about entrepreneurship, about what the backup plan is. If you're really, really good at your job and your job wants you and other companies want you, best believe, although it may be humbling, you go back to your company or any other company that wants you and say, hey, I started a business, it failed, I want to come and work for you. They want you because they got a lot of shitty people that work for them. You're one of the good ones. Right. They want you to come in back. So you have that backup plan. But I like to look at the phases of entrepreneurs and what the backup plan is. Because first-time entrepreneurs who are 6 months in, when they're not sure the business is going to work out or not, they say, hey, the backup plan is to go get the job I had before. I'm really good at that. I can go make the same money I made right now. Right around that 1 or 2 year mark of entrepreneurship, they say, the backup plan is now just starting a different business. Because I've realized that if I've got a good offer in the marketplace, a way to distribute it to people, I'm really good at this job of selling to people or delivering on this, adding value. If it's not in this industry that I'm in, I'll just do it somewhere else. And so it sounds like it gave you a lot of confidence a couple years into the journey that, hey, I'm always going to be this entrepreneur now and be a high income earner because I choose that because, hey, I know how to make money now. I know how to provide value to people. Is that what kind of went through your head?
You think of starting a business as this big complicated thing, and it really isn't. If you're doing something that other people need and your price is in range, your quality is high, like you're going to get business, right? I understand that now, and that's why I do believe you're absolutely right. It has completely shifted my mindset, because if for some reason this idea doesn't work over time, there's not as much of a market for it, there is something else that I can do. And now I have all these lessons learned that I can apply to the next thing. I can make sure that that's actually going to be successful, or I can give it a much better shot than what this first business actually had. Things are going great from that standpoint, right? But the next time, I'll save myself 6 months in getting to market and seeing our first revenue, or even bringing on investors, understanding what other people are willing to fund now that we have investors who are involved in our business, and seeing the way that they think about these things and putting the different pieces together. Like, I don't have to necessarily put in $100,000 of my own money the next time. And there's also this sense, I think some people look at and they feel like, if they're an entrepreneur and they fail, that venture capital or private equity will look at them and say, oh, that's a failed entrepreneur. That's not been my experience in how they look at those people. They look at those people as someone who's learned some really valuable lessons with someone else's money, But if that person has the grit and determination to keep going, they're interested in those entrepreneurs who have failed before,
Yeah, they're
who
almost
know why they failed,
yeah,
and know the reasons that it happened, and now know what to avoid.
more investable, almost
Yeah.
more investable.